The morning sun cast long shadows across the remote training facility in the Nevada desert, where the most elite marksmen from various special operations units had gathered for the annual long-range precision shooting competition. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her worn baseball cap and checked her gear one final time, ignoring the sideways glances from the other competitors. Her rifle case looked distinctly out of place among the gleaming high-end equipment surrounding her. While the other Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and Marine snipers unpacked custom-built rifles worth more than most people's cars, Maria carefully removed her Remington 700 from its battered case. The rifle had seen better days. Its stock bore the scars of countless missions, and the metal showed the patina of years in harsh environments. "You've got to be kidding me," muttered Gunnery Sergeant Rick Morrison, a Marine sniper with a reputation for making impossible shots. He gestured toward Maria's rifle with barely concealed amusement. "Santos, did you pick that thing up at a pawn shop?" Several other competitors gathered around, drawn by Morrison's commentary. Chief Petty Officer Jake Thompson, a SEAL Team 6 veteran with arms covered in tattoos documenting his deployments, shook his head in disbelief. "Maria, I thought you were serious about this competition. That rifle probably cost less than my scope." Maria continued her methodical preparation, running her hands along the familiar contours of her weapon. She had owned this rifle for 8 years, ever since she scraped together enough money as a young petty officer to buy it used from a retiring Marine. Over the years, she had learned every quirk, every subtle characteristic of how it performed in different conditions. "It's not about the price tag," she said quietly, not looking up from her work. "It's about knowing your equipment." Lieutenant Commander David Brooks, the competition organizer, approached the group. His expression suggested he shared the others' concerns about Maria's equipment choice. As a former SEAL sniper instructor, Brooks had seen plenty of shooters blame their equipment for poor performance. "Santos, you understand the parameters of today's challenge, correct?" Brooks asked, his tone professional but skeptical. "We're talking about extreme long-range precision shooting. The targets today will be placed at distances up to 3,500 meters. That's over 2 miles. Your equipment needs to be capable of that kind of performance." Maria finally looked up, meeting Brooks' gaze directly. Her dark eyes showed no doubt, only the quiet confidence that had carried her through some of the most dangerous missions in her 7-year SEAL career. "Sir, my equipment is capable. The question is whether I am." Morrison laughed, drawing more attention from the growing crowd of spectators. "Listen to this. She thinks that museum piece can compete with our custom builds. I've got $40,000 invested in my rifle system. The scope alone cost more than her entire setup." The gathering included some of the most accomplished snipers in the military. Master Sergeant Tom Rodriguez from Army Special Forces had made confirmed kills at over 2,400 meters in Afghanistan. Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Kim from the 75th Ranger Regiment held the record for longest confirmed kill by a female sniper. These were professionals who understood that in their line of work, equipment could mean the difference between mission success and failure. "Santos, no offense," said Rodriguez, "but this isn't a training exercise. This competition determines who represents the United States at the International Precision Shooting Championship. You're going up against the best snipers from around the world. They'll all have the latest technology, the most advanced equipment money can buy." Maria nodded respectfully. She understood their concerns were legitimate. In the special operations community, there was no room for false bravado or misplaced confidence. Lives depended on accurate assessments of capabilities and limitations. "I appreciate the concern," Maria replied, continuing to prepare her shooting position. "But this rifle and I have a history together. We've worked together in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. It's never let me down when it mattered." Thompson snorted derisively. "Combat shooting and precision competition are 2 different things entirely. In combat, you're shooting at center mass from a few hundred meters. Today, you need to put rounds through targets the size of dinner plates at distances where you can barely see the target with the naked eye. The truth was that Maria understood exactly what she was up against. She had studied the ballistics, calculated the environmental factors, and run countless practice sessions. Her rifle might not have the latest bells and whistles, but she knew its capabilities better than she knew her own heartbeat. Brooks consulted his clipboard and addressed the group. "Gentlemen, ladies, we'll begin with the qualification round in 30 minutes. Each shooter will engage targets at 800, 1,200, and 1,600 meters. The top 8 scores advance to the championship round, where targets will be placed at 2,800 and 3,200 meters. Kim shook her head as she looked at Maria's setup. "Santos, I've got nothing but respect for your service record. Your performance in Mosul last year was legendary, but this is different. You're setting yourself up for public embarrassment." The comment stung because Kim wasn't trying to be cruel. She was genuinely concerned about a fellow professional's reputation. In the tight-knit special operations community, word traveled fast. A poor performance here would follow Maria for years. Maria had faced skepticism before. When she first applied for SEAL training, instructors questioned whether she had the physical strength for the demands of special operations. During her first deployment, team members wondered if she could handle the psychological pressure of combat. Each time, she had responded not with words, but with performance. "I understand your concerns," Maria said, checking the 0 on her scope for the final time. "But I didn't come here to make friends or impress anyone with expensive equipment. I came here to shoot." Morrison gestured broadly toward the other competitors' setups. "Look around you, Santos. Every rifle here has been custom-built by the best gunsmiths in the country. Barrel lengths optimized for ballistic performance. Stocks designed for perfect ergonomics. Triggers adjusted to the individual shooter's preferences. Your rifle is essentially factory standard." "Actually," Maria said, allowing herself a small smile, "it's not entirely stock. I've made some modifications over the years." This drew interested looks from several competitors. In the shooting community, custom modifications were often closely guarded secrets that could provide competitive advantages. Rodriguez leaned in closer. "What kind of modifications?" "Nothing fancy," Maria replied. "Better trigger group, glass-bedded action, hand-loaded ammunition tailored to this specific barrel. Small things that matter when you know your equipment well enough." Thompson remained skeptical. "Hand-loaded ammunition? Santos, the top competitive shooters use ammunition that costs $15 per round. Computer-analyzed powder charges, temperature-stable propellants, bullets manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch." Maria nodded acknowledgement. "My ammunition costs about $2 per round to make. But I've tested every component, weighed every powder charge by hand, measured every cartridge case. I know exactly how each round will perform." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of several international competitors who would be observing the American selection process. The British SAS team leader, Captain James Mitchell, approached the group with professional curiosity. "I understand one of your shooters is using rather unconventional equipment," Mitchell said in his clipped accent. "Our intelligence suggests the competition will be quite fierce this year. The Russian team has some remarkable new technology." Brooks grimaced slightly. The international championship had become increasingly competitive as various nations invested heavily in precision shooting capabilities. The American team's performance was considered a matter of national pride. "We're confident in our selection process," Brooks replied diplomatically. "Our shooters represent the best of American special operations." Mitchell's gaze found Maria's rifle setup and his eyebrows rose slightly. "Ah, yes. Quite traditional approach. Reminds me of some of the old-school snipers I knew in the Falklands. They often preferred equipment they understood completely over the latest technology." Kim stepped closer to Maria. "Santos, it's not too late to withdraw. Thompson has backup equipment you could use. A Barrett MRAD with all the accessories. You could still compete with proper equipment." Maria appreciated the offer but shook her head. "Thank you, but I'll stick with what I know. This rifle and I understand each other." As the preparation time wound down, the atmosphere grew more tense. The qualification round would separate the serious competitors from those who had overestimated their abilities. At 1,600 meters, even the smallest error in calculation or execution would result in a complete miss. Morrison made one final attempt to dissuade Maria. "Santos, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen shooters with natural talent flame out because they didn't respect the equipment requirements. Long-range precision shooting isn't just about skill. It's about having the right tools for the job." "I understand," Maria replied, settling into her shooting position. "But sometimes the right tool is the one you know best, not the one that costs the most." The other competitors had finished their preparations and were conducting final equipment checks. Their rifles represented the cutting edge of precision shooting technology. Computer-designed stocks, barrels manufactured to aerospace tolerances, scopes with internal ballistic computers that automatically calculated range and environmental corrections. Maria's setup looked almost primitive by comparison. Her scope was a reliable but basic model without the electronic features that had become standard in competitive shooting. Her rifle stock was functional but showed the wear of years of hard use. Even her shooting mat was a simple military-issue item rather than the specialized competition gear used by the others. Yet as Maria settled into her firing position, there was something unmistakably professional about her preparation. Her movements were economical and purposeful, developed through years of high-stakes situations where lives depended on first-round accuracy. Brooks called the competitors to the firing line. "Gentlemen, ladies, take your positions for the 800-meter qualification." The targets at 800 meters appeared as small white dots in the distance. For experienced military snipers, this distance was well within their normal engagement range. However, the precision required for competition shooting was significantly greater than combat standards. Maria controlled her breathing and settled behind her rifle. The familiar weight and balance felt comfortable in her hands. Through her scope, the target appeared clear and sharp. She had made this shot thousands of times in training and combat situations. The range officer's voice cut through the desert air. "Shooters, you have 10 minutes to engage your targets. 5 shots for score. You may begin when ready." The sound of rifle fire began almost immediately as competitors engaged their targets. Maria took her time, feeling the wind conditions and making minute adjustments to her scope. Her first shot broke cleanly, the recoil familiar and controlled. Through her spotting scope, Maria's spotter called out the hit. "Center X-ring dead center." Around her, the other competitors were also performing well at this distance. Morrison, Thompson, and Kim all achieved perfect scores on the 800-meter targets. The real test would come at longer ranges where equipment differences became more pronounced. As the competitors moved to the 200-meter line, the skeptical comments resumed. At this distance, the targets were barely visible to the naked eye, appearing as tiny specks in the heat shimmer of the desert. "This is where equipment starts to matter," Morrison commented as he adjusted his high-end scope. "At this range, every advantage counts." Maria made her own adjustments, using the simple but reliable turrets on her older scope. The calculations were more complex now, requiring consideration of bullet drop, wind drift, and the effects of temperature and altitude on ballistic performance. Her shooting position felt solid and natural. The rifle tracked smoothly as she made small adjustments for each shot. One by one, her rounds found their mark, grouping tightly around the center of the target. When the scoring was completed, Maria had achieved another perfect score. Several of the other top competitors had also shot clean, but some had begun to show the strain of the longer distances. The 1D 600-meter targets represented the limit of what most military snipers considered practical engagement range. At this distance, the slightest error in judgment or equipment could result in a complete miss. "All right, Santos," Thompson admitted grudgingly. "You're shooting well so far. But this is where your equipment limitations are going to show. At 1/600 meters, the margin for error is virtually zero." Maria nodded acknowledgement, but remained focused on her preparation. She had engaged targets at this distance in combat situations, though never with the precision required for competition. The wind had shifted slightly, requiring new calculations for drift compensation. Maria studied the mirage patterns in her scope and made careful adjustments to her point of aim. Her first shot at 1,600 meters felt perfect as it broke. The bullet's flight time to the target was nearly 3 seconds, long enough to imagine all the variables that could affect its path. "Hit! Center ring!" her spotter called out. Maria completed her string of 5 shots methodically, each one feeling like a natural extension of her preparation and calculation. When the final scores were announced, she had not only qualified for the championship round, but had tied for the highest qualifying score. Morrison shook his head in amazement. "I'll be damned, Santos. Your old rifle can shoot." "The rifle was never the question," Maria replied with a slight smile. "It's always been about the shooter." As the competitors prepared for the championship round, the atmosphere had shifted. Maria's performance with her modest equipment had earned grudging respect from her peers. However, the real test lay ahead. The championship targets would be placed at 2,800 and 3,200 meters, distances where even the smallest equipment deficiency could prove decisive. Brooks approached Maria as she prepared her equipment for the final round. "Santos, I have to admit I'm impressed, but the championship distances are in a different league entirely. Are you confident your equipment can perform at over 2 miles? Maria looked toward the distant targets, barely visible even through binoculars. At 3,200 meters, she would be pushing both her equipment and her skills to their absolute limits. "Sir, there's only one way to find out," she replied, settling behind her rifle once again. The championship round began with the 2,800-meter targets, positioned so far downrange that they required high-powered spotting scopes to locate. The desert heat had intensified throughout the morning, creating dancing mirages that would challenge even the most sophisticated optical equipment. Maria studied the conditions carefully through her scope. At this distance, environmental factors became exponentially more critical. A 5-mile-per-hour crosswind could push a bullet 18 inches off target. Temperature variations could affect muzzle velocity enough to cause a complete miss. "Jesus Christ," muttered Chief Warrant Officer Kim, peering through her spotting scope at the distant target. "I can barely see the damn thing, let alone hit it." The targets themselves were steel plates measuring 18 inches square. Generous by military standards, but incredibly challenging at nearly 3 kilometers. Each competitor would fire 3 shots for score, with only their best 2 shots counting toward the final ranking. Morrison was first on the firing order. His custom rifle represented the pinnacle of precision shooting technology. The barrel alone had cost $8,000, manufactured from premium stainless steel and hand-lapped to perfect internal dimensions. His scope featured an internal ballistic computer that automatically calculated range, wind drift, and trajectory corrections. "Range 2,847 meters, Morrison's spotter called out after confirming the exact distance with a laser rangefinder. "Wind 2 to 3 miles per hour left to right, temperature 87 degrees. Morrison made fine adjustments to his scope settings and settled into his shooting position. His rifle's advanced muzzle brake reduced felt recoil to almost nothing, allowing him to maintain sight picture through the shot sequence. The crack of his rifle echoed across the desert. Several seconds later, his spotter confirmed the hit. "Good strike, center left of the plate." Morrison's second shot also found the target, though not as precisely centered as his first. His equipment had performed flawlessly, demonstrating why serious competitors invested heavily in the latest technology. Thompson was next, and his performance proved equally impressive. His rifle system included a barrel with specially designed rifling that imparted optimal spin stabilization to match his custom ammunition. 2 solid hits on the steel plate established the standard that remaining competitors would need to match. Rodriguez followed with another strong performance. His Army Special Forces experience showed in his methodical approach to each shot. Like the others, his high-end equipment delivered the precision necessary for success at extreme range. As Maria prepared for her turn, the skeptical comments resumed. The successful performances by competitors with top-tier equipment seemed to validate their earlier arguments about the importance of having the right tools. "Santos, your rifle did great at the shorter distances," Kim said, her tone sympathetic but realistic. "But at this range, ballistic performance becomes critical. Your factory barrel and basic ammunition might not have the consistency needed for precision at nearly 3 kilometers. Maria appreciated Kim's concern, but she had already committed to seeing this through with her chosen equipment. She had calculated the ballistics extensively, accounting for every variable she could measure or estimate. "Maria," Brooks said quietly, "there's no shame in acknowledging equipment limitations. These targets are at the absolute edge of what's physically possible, even with the best equipment available." Through her scope, Maria studied the distant target. The heat shimmer made it appear to dance and waver, creating an optical illusion that could easily lead to misplaced shots. Her older scope lacked the specialized coatings and optical features that helped more advanced systems cut through atmospheric distortion. "Range 2,000 to 847 meters confirmed," her spotter announced. "Wind conditions variable, approximately 2 to 4 miles per hour from the left." Maria had loaded her ammunition specifically for these conditions. Each cartridge had been assembled by hand, with powder charges weighed to the nearest tenth of a grain. The bullets were premium match-grade projectiles, though not the exotic custom designs used by her competitors. She adjusted her scope's elevation and windage settings, relying on calculations she had memorized rather than the electronic ballistic computers available in more advanced systems. Her breathing slowed as she prepared for the shot sequence that would determine whether her equipment could truly perform at this level. The crosshairs settled on the target, wavering slightly in the heat mirage. Maria waited for the natural respiratory pause between breaths, feeling the trigger's familiar break point under her fingertip. The shot felt perfect as it broke. Her rifle's recoil was more pronounced than the muzzle-braked systems used by other competitors, but Maria had learned to manage it through thousands of practice repetitions. "Time of flight approximately 4 seconds, her spotter warned, reminding Maria of the extended delay before impact at this extreme range. The wait seemed endless. 4 seconds was long enough for doubt to creep in, time to imagine all the variables that could have affected the bullet's path. Wind shifts, temperature variations, even the Earth's rotation could influence accuracy at this distance. "Hit!" her spotter called out enthusiastically. "Solid strike right side of the plate." A murmur of surprise rippled through the group of observers. Maria's success with her basic equipment was generating genuine amazement among competitors who had invested fortunes in their rifle systems. Her second shot at 2,800 meters proved even more precise, striking within inches of the plate's center. When the round was complete, Maria had achieved one of the best scores of the day, despite using equipment that cost a fraction of her competitors' setups. Morrison shook his head in disbelief. "Santos, I don't understand how that old rifle is keeping up with our custom builds. At this distance, every technical advantage should matter." "Maybe that's the point," Maria replied. "When you know your equipment intimately, you can compensate for its limitations. When everything is computer-controlled, you lose that personal connection." The comment sparked a philosophical debate among the competitors. In an era of increasingly sophisticated technology, there was something appealing about Maria's old-school approach to precision shooting. "There's truth in that," Rodriguez admitted. "I sometimes wonder if we've become too dependent on our equipment to solve problems that should be solved through skill and experience." However, the final challenge would put Maria's philosophy to the ultimate test. The 3,200-meter targets represented the absolute limit of practical small arms precision. At this distance, even championship-level equipment was pushed to its theoretical capabilities. Brooks gathered the remaining competitors for a final briefing. "Ladies and gentlemen, the 3,200-meter challenge represents the pinnacle of precision shooting. You'll each fire 2 shots for record. The highest combined score wins the competition and earns a slot on the international championship team." The targets at 3,200 meters were barely visible, even through high-powered spotting equipment. Heat distortion created a shimmering effect that made precise aiming extremely difficult. Wind conditions had become increasingly variable as thermal currents developed throughout the day. "At this distance," Brooks continued, "environmental factors become critical. Coriolis effect, air density variations, even minor changes in ammunition temperature can affect point of impact. This is why we consider this the premier test of both equipment and shooter capability." The international observers had gathered to watch the final round. Captain Mitchell from the British SAS studied Maria's equipment setup with professional interest. "Remarkable performance so far with that rifle," Mitchell commented. "Reminds me of some of the old-school snipers from my early career. They often achieved extraordinary results with basic equipment simply because they understood it so completely." A Russian observer, Colonel Petrov, was less diplomatic in his assessment. "Basic equipment has fundamental limitations. At extreme range, precision manufacturing and advanced technology become essential for consistent performance." The debate reflected broader philosophical differences in the international shooting community. Some nations had embraced the most advanced technology available, while others maintained that shooter skill remained the primary factor in precision shooting. Kim was first to attempt the 3,200-meter challenge. Her rifle represented a perfect balance of proven technology and cutting-edge innovation. The barrel was manufactured using techniques developed for aerospace applications, while her scope featured computer-controlled parallax adjustment and automatic atmospheric compensation. "Range 3,047 meters, Kim's spotter confirmed. Wind conditions complex, approximately 3 to 5 miles per hour, variable direction." At this extreme distance, wind became a three-dimensional problem. Different air layers could push bullets in varying directions, creating a complex ballistic puzzle that challenged even the most sophisticated equipment. Kim's first shot impacted low and left of the target plate. Her spotter made rapid calculations for a correction, accounting for the observed bullet impact and current conditions. Her second shot struck the edge of the target plate, a hit, but barely. The precision required at 3,200 meters was testing the limits of both human capability and equipment performance. Thompson's attempt produced similar results. One solid hit and one marginal strike demonstrated the extreme difficulty of the challenge. Even with their advanced equipment, the most experienced competitors were struggling with consistency at this range. Rodriguez managed 2 solid hits, but neither was precisely centered on the target. The accumulated small errors inherent in any shooting system, barrel variations, ammunition inconsistencies, optical limitations, became magnified at extreme range. Morrison's performance proved most impressive among the advanced equipment users. His expensive rifle system delivered 2 well-centered hits on the target plate. His investment in cutting-edge technology appeared to be paying dividends at the maximum challenge distance. "That's the standard to beat," Brooks announced after Morrison's string. 2 solid hits, both well-centered on the target. As Maria prepared for her attempt, the skepticism had largely transformed into curiosity. Her consistent performance with basic equipment had earned respect, even from competitors who remained convinced that technology ultimately provided decisive advantages. Santos, you've already proven your point, Thompson said genuinely. Nobody expected that rifle to perform at these distances. You've got nothing left to prove. Maria appreciated the sentiment, but she had come here with a specific goal. The international championship team represented the pinnacle of competitive precision shooting. She wanted to earn her place through performance, not sympathy or novelty. I appreciate that, Maria replied, settling behind her rifle for the final time. But I didn't come this far to stop before the real test. Through her scope, the target appeared as a tiny square dancing in the heat mirage. At 3,200 meters, the bullet would take nearly 5 seconds to reach the target, an eternity in precision shooting terms. Every environmental variable would have maximum opportunity to affect the bullet's path. Maria had calculated the ballistic requirements extensively. Her hand-loaded ammunition was optimized for these specific conditions, but she lacked the exotic projectiles and temperature-stable powders used by her competitors. Her scope, while reliable, didn't have the advanced reticles and ballistic computers that automatically compensated for environmental factors. Range 3,247 meters confirmed, her spotter announced. Current conditions, wind approximately 4 miles per hour, shifting between left and right. Temperature 91 degrees and climbing. The temperature increase was significant. Hotter air was less dense, which would affect bullet trajectory. Maria made mental calculations to adjust her point of aim, relying on experience and intuition rather than computerized ballistic solutions. Her breathing settled into the slow, controlled rhythm that preceded precision shots. The crosshairs wavered slightly on the distant target, requiring constant fine adjustments to maintain proper sight picture. The first shot broke cleanly, feeling identical to the thousands of practice shots she had fired with this rifle over the years. The recoil lifted the scope momentarily from the target, but Maria smoothly returned to her aiming point to spot the impact. 5 seconds felt like an hour. In that time, she visualized the bullet's flight path, imagining it cutting through layers of heated air, fighting crosswinds and atmospheric pressure variations. "Miss," her spotter called out, disappointment evident in his voice. "Impact low and right of the target frame." The miss was crushing, but not entirely unexpected. At 3,200 meters, environmental factors became extremely difficult to predict with basic equipment. Maria's calculations had been close, but not precise enough for the unforgiving requirements of extreme long-range shooting. Morrison couldn't resist commenting. "Santos, that's exactly what I was trying to tell you. At this distance, equipment limitations become impossible to overcome through skill alone." Maria ignored the comment, focusing on analyzing what had gone wrong with her first shot. The impact point suggested her wind call had been slightly off, and possibly her elevation calculation as well. Second shot, same conditions, her spotter reported. Wind appears to be strengthening slightly. This was her final chance. A miss would end her competition, while a hit could still salvage a respectable finish. More importantly, it would validate her belief that precision shooting remained fundamentally about the shooter's skill and knowledge. Maria made subtle adjustments to her point of aim, compensating for the observed error from her first shot. The corrections were based on experience and intuition, rather than computerized ballistic solutions. The crosshairs settled on the target once again. Maria's breathing slowed, her heartbeat became background noise, and the world narrowed to the small circle of her scope's field of view. The trigger broke with the same familiar feel as thousands of previous shots. The bullet began its 5-second journey across nearly 2 miles of desert air, carrying with it Maria's hopes of proving that skill and knowledge could compete with technology and equipment. Through her spotting scope, her spotter tracked the bullet's impact point. The steel target plate seemed impossibly small at this distance, a tiny square that demanded absolute precision from both shooter and equipment. "Come on," Maria whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The seconds stretched endlessly as the bullet flew toward its target, carrying the hopes and skepticism of everyone watching this final test of human and equipment capability at the very limits of precision shooting. "Hit!" The word exploded from her spotter's lips with such enthusiasm that it startled everyone within 50 yards. Through his high-powered spotting scope, he had watched the bullet strike the steel target plate with a distinctive metallic ring that carried across the desert silence. "Dead center," he continued, his voice cracking with excitement. "Perfect hit, right in the middle of the plate." For a moment, stunned silence dominated the firing line. The other competitors, range officials, and international observers struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Maria Santos had struck a target over 2 miles away using a rifle that cost less than most competitors' scopes. Morrison was the first to speak, his voice filled with genuine amazement. "That's impossible. At 3,247 meters, with those conditions, that shot should not have been makeable with that equipment." Through binoculars, range officials confirmed the impact. The bullet had struck within 4 inches of the target's center, a phenomenally precise shot at any distance, but truly extraordinary at over 2 miles. Maria remained behind her rifle for several seconds, processing her own disbelief. She had felt the shot break cleanly, had trusted her calculations and adjustments, but the margin for error at that distance was so small that success seemed almost miraculous. Brooks approached with his scoring tablet, shaking his head in amazement. "Santos, that may be the most impressive shot I've witnessed in 20 years of precision shooting. With a basic rifle system, no ballistic computer, and hand-loaded ammunition, it defies everything we thought we knew about equipment requirements." The impact on the other competitors was immediate and profound. These were professionals who had invested decades in perfecting their craft and fortunes in acquiring the most advanced equipment available. Maria's success challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technology and performance. Kim was first to offer congratulations, her earlier skepticism replaced by genuine respect. "Maria, I owe you an apology. I was so focused on equipment specifications that I forgot the most important component in any shooting system. The person behind the rifle." Thompson nodded agreement, his expression thoughtful. "Santos, you've just taught us all a lesson. We've become so dependent on technology that we've maybe lost sight of the fundamentals. Your shot was pure marksmanship." Captain Mitchell from the British SAS approached Maria with professional interest. "Extraordinary shooting, Sergeant Santos. That reminds me of some legendary shots from the Falklands conflict. Would you mind sharing your approach to making that final correction?" Maria was happy to explain her methodology. "The first shot told me my wind call was slightly off and my elevation was low. I adjusted based on what I observed, not what the computer would have calculated. Sometimes you have to trust your experience over the technology." Colonel Petrov, the Russian observer, had watched the entire sequence through high-powered optics. His expression suggested grudging respect mixed with professional curiosity. "Impressive shooting," Petrov admitted in heavily accented English. "However, one successful shot does not validate an approach. Consistency requires precision manufacturing and controlled variables." Rodriguez stepped forward to address the Russian's comment. "With respect, Colonel, Santos has been consistent all day. She qualified with a perfect score and performed at the top level through every distance. This wasn't luck, it was skill." The final scoring confirmed Maria's victory by a narrow margin. Her perfect hit at 3,247 meters, combined with her consistent performance throughout the competition, earned her the top position and a spot on the international championship team. Brooks made the announcement official. "Ladies and gentlemen, this year's winner and newest member of the United States Precision Shooting Team, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos." The applause was immediate and genuine. Even competitors who had questioned Maria's equipment choice recognized the exceptional nature of her performance. She had not only won the competition, but had done so in a way that challenged conventional wisdom about precision shooting requirements. Morrison approached Maria as she packed her equipment. His earlier skepticism had been replaced by curiosity and respect. "Santos, I need to understand something. How did you develop such precision with basic equipment? Most of us have been chasing technological solutions for problems that maybe should have been solved through skill development." Maria considered the question carefully. "I think it's about understanding your equipment completely rather than having the most advanced equipment available. This rifle and I have worked together for 8 years. I know exactly how it performs in different conditions, how my ammunition behaves at various temperatures, how wind affects different bullet weights." The conversation attracted other competitors who wanted to understand Maria's approach. Her victory had implications beyond just this competition. It suggested that the pursuit of ever more advanced technology might not be the only path to precision shooting excellence. "The key is consistency," Maria continued. "I use the same ammunition components, load to the same specifications, and practice in similar conditions. My equipment may be basic, but it's predictable. I can compensate for its limitations because I understand them completely." Thompson was intrigued by this philosophy. "But surely there are fundamental ballistic advantages to premium equipment. Barrel accuracy, ammunition consistency, optical precision. These factors have to matter at extreme range." Maria nodded acknowledgement. "They absolutely matter. But they're only advantages if you understand how to use them properly. I've seen shooters with $50,000 rifle systems perform poorly because they relied on technology to solve problems they should have solved through practice and understanding." Kim raised an important point. "Maria, what happens at the international championship? You'll be competing against shooters with unlimited budgets and access to the most advanced technology available. Will your approach still be competitive?" The question highlighted a significant challenge. The international championship would feature competitors from nations with enormous investments in precision shooting technology. Some teams had equipment that cost more than most people's houses. "That's exactly why this approach might work," Maria replied. "Most of my competitors will be using technology they don't fully understand. They'll rely on ballistic computers and automated systems to make their calculations. If conditions fall outside their equipment's parameters, they might struggle to adapt." Captain Mitchell found this reasoning compelling. "There's historical precedent for that thinking. Some of our most legendary snipers achieved remarkable success with basic equipment simply because they understood it so thoroughly. Technology is a tool, not a replacement for skill." Brooks approached the group with additional information about the international championship. "Santos, you should know what you're up against. The German team has rifles with barrels manufactured to aerospace tolerances. The Swiss are using ammunition that costs $30 per round. Some teams have equipment that automatically adjusts for atmospheric conditions." "Sir, I appreciate the information," Maria replied, "but I'll be competing with equipment I trust and understand completely. That has to count for something." As the day wound down, word of Maria's victory began spreading throughout the special operations community. Social media posts and phone calls carried news of the SEAL who had outshot elite competition using basic equipment. Master Chief Peterson, Maria's team leader, called within hours of the competition's conclusion. "Santos, I just heard about your performance today. Outstanding work. You've made the entire SEAL community proud." The conversation reminded Maria of why she had chosen this approach. Throughout her military career, she had learned to excel with whatever equipment was available. Special operations often required making do with less than ideal resources while achieving exceptional results. "Thank you, Master Chief. I just tried to apply the same principles we use in combat. Understand your equipment, practice consistently, and adapt to conditions as they develop." Peterson's pride was evident in his voice. That's exactly the mindset that makes SEALs successful. Technology is great when it's available, but skill and adaptability will always be more important. As evening approached, The international observers prepared to return to their respective countries. Each would carry word of the American shooter who had achieved remarkable success with basic equipment. Captain Mitchell offered final thoughts before departing. "Sergeant Santos, your performance today reminded everyone that precision shooting remains fundamentally a human skill. Technology can enhance that skill, but it cannot replace the judgment, experience, and adaptability that you demonstrated." Colonel Petrov's farewell was more reserved but equally respectful. "Your shooting was impressive, Sergeant. We will be interested to see how your approach performs at the international level." The challenge inherent in his comment was clear. The international championship would test Maria's philosophy against the most advanced precision shooting technology and techniques available worldwide. Rodriguez raised a question that had occurred to several competitors. "Maria, are you concerned about equipment reliability at the international level? Your rifle has performed flawlessly today, but what if something goes wrong during the championship?" Maria had considered this possibility extensively. "My equipment is simple enough that most problems can be fixed with basic tools. Complex systems sometimes fail in ways that can't be repaired quickly. Simplicity has advantages when reliability matters." Thompson was intrigued by this perspective. "That's actually a good point. I've had electronic ballistic computers fail at critical moments. Basic equipment might be more dependable under pressure." As competitors packed their equipment, conversations continued about the implications of Maria's victory. Her success had challenged assumptions that many had held for years about the relationship between equipment investment and performance. Kim offered a final observation. "Maria, regardless of what happens at the international championship, you've already proven something important. You've shown that skill, practice, and understanding can compete with technology and money." The drive back to base gave Maria time to reflect on the day's events. Her victory felt satisfying, but she understood it was only the beginning. The international championship would present challenges that made today's competition seem simple by comparison. Her phone buzzed with messages from fellow SEALs, family members, and friends who had heard about her victory. Each message reinforced the significance of what she had accomplished. One text from her younger brother particularly resonated. "Saw the news about your competition. Mom would have been proud. You showed them that heart and skill matter more than money." Maria's mother had passed away 3 years earlier, but her influence remained strong. She had taught Maria that success came through dedication and perseverance rather than shortcuts or expensive solutions. The upcoming international championship would test these principles at the highest level. Maria would face competitors with unlimited resources and access to technology she had never seen. However, she would also bring something unique, an intimate understanding of her equipment and absolute confidence in her ability to adapt to any conditions. As she pulled into the base parking lot, Maria felt a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. Today's victory had validated her approach and earned her the opportunity to represent her country. The real test lay ahead, but she was ready to prove that precision shooting remained fundamentally about the person behind the rifle, not the technology in their hands. The military precision shooting community would watch with interest as Maria prepared for the international championship. Her success had sparked debates about equipment philosophy, training approaches, and the role of technology in precision shooting. Some would argue that her victory was an anomaly that wouldn't be repeatable against international competition. Others believed she had rediscovered fundamental principles that had been overshadowed by the pursuit of technological solutions. Maria understood that her performance at the international championship would ultimately determine which perspective proved correct. She was confident in her approach, but she also respected the challenge ahead. The world's best precision shooters would test every aspect of her skill and equipment. As she secured her rifle in her personal locker, Maria smiled at the worn stock and familiar contours. This rifle had carried her through combat deployments, training exercises, and now competitive victory. Together, they would face whatever challenges the international championship presented. The story of the Navy SEAL who shocked elite marksmen with an inexpensive rifle would inspire debates and discussions throughout the precision shooting community. More importantly, it would remind everyone that in the end, the most sophisticated technology was only as good as the person using it.